do a little bit of housekeeping here. Just to note, we are going to record this program for a few other folks who weren't able to make it but wanted to view the program. So just a heads up on that. If you do have questions, we're going to start with a little bit of a curated Q&A, but make sure to raise your hand or ping the chat if you have something, a follow-up question, something you'd like to ask in tandem with what we're on, or if you'd just like to chime in with your own experience, comment. We'd love to hear it. We want this to feel like a group discussion as well as, good Q&A with some of our experts here we have with us. My name is Max Molzon. I'm manager of membership development here at the Springfield Chamber. And I'd like to welcome you to the 4th year of our business boot camp. This program started, for those of you who might not know, as a program about the business of running a business. A lot of small businesses have a great product, idea, service that they're ready to bring to the world, and it's working out great. And then there are some other difficulties that come into play, taxes, legislation that might be impacting their business. A whole bunch of other things are involved with running a business beyond that service that you're providing. And these classes are put in place to help keep our small business owners in the know and give them access to experts to help accomplish their goals as well as they can. Last year, as well as this year, we've definitely been focusing a little bit more on how to deal with some of the challenges that have come with COVID-19. So whether that's helping businesses last fall improve their online web presence, or last spring, do some stress testing and really bring some business skills to them to take a look at their business plan. We're bringing sort of the best experts to those folks. As always, we couldn't do this without our sponsors. For the 2nd year in a row, we're super happy to have Northwest Natural sponsoring this program. And Northwest Natural serves more than 770,000 customers across the Pacific Northwest. Customers who are also their neighbors. Their mission is to provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy in an environmentally responsible way to save the lives of the public they serve. So with that, what I'm going to do is introduce you to the folks we have to speak to you today. We have Seth Gruschow with Togather Restaurant Consulting, Holly Tate with the UO Career Center, and Maya Tagwerker, who I'm really excited is a student at UO, is going to give us a little bit of perspective from those entering the workforce as new folks in our community in that position. So with that, we'll allow them to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they're tracking in terms of workforce and what that looks like in their local area. So Seth, we'll go ahead and start with you if that's all right.
Sure. My name is Seth Gruschow. I am the founder of Togather Restaurant Consulting based out of Springfield, Oregon. We are a full service operational consultant for the hospitality industry. We do everything from menu creation to budget implementation and branding and marketing, the whole gamut. So we live in the hospitality world. I guess try to put, we kind of have some time here, and this is a subject we could probably talk about almost all day long if we wanted to. I'll get into the reasons why I think that. But even though we're focused on the hospitality side and the restaurant food service side, I think there's a lot of principles that cross over into all sorts of industries when we're dealing with this, because let's be honest, we know why we're talking about this is industries are struggling with trying to find the workforce that's out there, and they're kind of scrambling to find the answer for it, right? This is a problem that we need an answer for. I don't believe in problems that are void of solutions. There might be a few exceptions out there, but the one thing I love about being in the business community, especially in this area, being involved with the chamber and just this community, is the one thing I love about small business owners or business owners in general is we're innovators, right? There's almost an art to our problem solving. So again, this is a solution. I believe that, I believe this is a problem that has a solution. It's really us coming together. I think thinking outside the box is the first thing I kind of want to talk about, but it's also about asking the right questions, right? Because we want to find this answer, but we're not going to find the answer if we don't ask the right questions. And while we're asking these questions, right, we don't want to change our standards. Our standards is what built us as business owners, right? It's what made us who we are. So asking the right questions without compromising standards, that's really important. The first question I always ask when it comes to workforce and labor, I work with clients all over the Northwest, and I'll go into places that are running a really high labor. And I started having these conversations of why, we started getting busier and we got busier and we needed to hire more people because we got busier. And so again, asking the right question. So the first question I always ask is, do I need to add more labor, right? We're talking about labor shortages, right? Can I break down my process? Can I re-look at how I'm doing things and do things different? Get the same results I'm looking for, continue the growth I'm looking for? Can I leverage technology, right? What can I do? To me, that's always the first question when it comes to labor and dealing with labor is, do I even need to add it? And I get this doesn't apply to everybody. So let's just say that we've asked that question. We're like, yeah, I need more labor. It sounds like what a lot of people are dealing with these days. So we know the answer is yes to that, right? The next question, I guess, really is why am I not attracting these open positions? Right? You got to ask that question. Why? What is it? Why do I have more openings than I'm getting applicants? Is there a singular issue that's working against me? I can answer that one for you right now. The answer is no. This is a multivariable issue, and we need to approach it that way. It's not as simple as I'm not paying enough, or my culture isn't good, or whatever you think, or and I hear it a lot too. And I'm not saying it's not an issue. I hear a lot of, well, the unemployment is happening and people aren't coming back to work, right? So again, it's multivariable. There's lots of different levels to this, right? And not saying each one of those isn't a component, but if we don't approach this in looking at it holistically whole, we're not going to get the right answer, right? So really asking that question is, why am I not getting applicants, right? I think once we ask that question, I think we're really going to count. What it's really going to come down to is what is it that's not aligning my standards, my needs? Why is that not aligning with what the workforce is looking for? That's really the next question, right? Is what is the workforce looking for? Again, you'll hear a question a lot with me, because to me, this is just consistently asking the right question. So what is the workforce looking for? That's out there, everybody. That's a Google search for a business owner, literally. There's lots of research in this area. So again, now, all right, here's my needs. Here's what the workforce is needing. How am I going to align those two things? How do I bring those together? Again, I'll be repetitive, without changing your standards, without changing who you are as a company, what you want to deliver, whether that's guest service, product, whatever it might be. How do I align those two things? Normally when we think about a competitive job market, we think about a lot of applicants with little jobs, right? Well, that's flipped on us as employers. Now it's the opposite. The opposite is now that we have a lot of jobs with no applicants, or applicants that won't show up for interviews. I mean, I'm hearing all this stuff that's going on here, right? They apply and they don't even show up for an interview. Multiple no-shows to interviews. So being honest with ourselves, we're in a competitive job market, just in a different way. And then us as business owners are great at understanding the value of marketing, right? Like, we know what it means to market and how important that is to our business to attract potential new clients or customers or consumers, whatever we're selling or whatever our business is servicing. We need to really think about that when it comes to how we're marketing to potential workforce. I think that's so crucial, and I think something that's overlooked a lot, right? Like, wording matters. Wording makes a difference. I was telling Max a story, and he wanted me to bring it up, so I'll bring it up quick. And I hope I'm not running too far over here, Max. But we had put out a job application for our company for an assistant position for our director, and it was actually Natalie from Shield that wrote the ad. And I thought she did a great job because of the way she worded it. She talked a lot about what our principles of the company, right? Like helping the community, helping small businesses. The way she worded it was great. And it paid between $17 and $20 an hour. I know so many restaurants right now that are looking for cooks that with tips, they're making about $17 to $20 an hour. I was flooded with that for that position. And I have people that are paying the same pay rate that are getting little to no applicants at all, right? They have 3 job openings and they're getting 1 applicant. I thought a lot of it had to do with Natalie's wording and how she worded the ad. And so those are some things, and I won't go too far because like I said, I could keep kind of going on, but just kind of to circle back, it's really, let's just break down the whole process. And I'm not trying to offend anybody here, right? Like, it's very easy for us to be like, well, when I was coming up, this is what I dealt with. This is right. Like, we need to kind of let all of that go. We need to break the whole process down. If we don't, we're going to be dead on the vine. A colleague of mine said that one time, and it stuck out to me because it's so true. It's like, imagine if you didn't make any adjustments in the last year. You decided not to adjust to what was happening around you, right? I don't think you're probably not sitting in this meeting right now as a business owner or business operator. So this is another crisis that we're dealing with, right? So adjusting is important. So really kind of being honest with ourselves and being hard on ourselves too. I think it's so important as business owners and operators that we do that. And I guess that's kind of my 5-minute take on the way that I think we need to approach what we're all dealing with as business owners.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Seth. Very much appreciate you setting the table there for us, and we'll be interested in getting a little deeper into some of those questions in just a bit. Before we get to the questions, though, I'd like to introduce Holly Tate. And Holly, let you introduce yourself and a little bit of what you have going on over at UO.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for allowing me to be here today. I am an educator by trade, so of course I came with the PowerPoint. I also will make sure this is available to you afterwards. It's got a lot of good links at the end so that anytime I talk about resources that can help you as a small business owner, you'll have access to those after the fact. And so I'm gonna make this bigger so I can see it on my screen. So like they said, my name is Holly Tate, and I am the job and internship developer specifically for Eugene Springfield for the University of Oregon. And so I spend all day working with our students and local employers to think about how we can make connections for students to be able to gain the workforce skills that they need as the future of the Oregon workforce. And so I help local businesses think about how to develop internship programs, how to rewrite job descriptions to make them more attractive to Gen Z, how to use different technologies that the university has in place to get the word out about your positions. And so I am a resource for all of you. I will make sure you have my email, but you can reach out to me at any time for consultations to be able to help you think about how you can integrate current students and young alumni into your workforce. So I know Maya will talk a little bit about her own personal experience, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what the current graduating students are thinking about when it comes to what they're thinking about their career goals. And a lot of them are entrepreneurial spirits, just like you. And so a lot of them love the idea of working for small businesses. They like the idea of being self-employed. The thing I really liked about this was the idea that more than 50% don't expect to do a job that doesn't even exist yet. So our students are really forward thinking and wanting to think about how can they be building skills, soft and hard now, that will help them to be leaders in industries that we don't even know exist yet. And that's just really exciting. Even with COVID, we've seen that a lot of our students are still drawn to these types of responses. And so the idea that they would rather be unemployed than work at a job that they don't feel a connection to, like, I think that speaks a lot to what Seth was talking about of how do we communicate our values as a business and our work culture to help people understand how they can fit in our companies. And so those are really important things to just kind of set the stage as we're thinking about what that future workforce looks like. When we ask our students about what their career goals and expectations are, number one is contributing to the greater good. And so for us as small business owners to be able to express the why of why we have our business and why we do what we do, and helping future employees understand how your work fits into the bigger picture of the world, like that's something really important to them. Next is work-life balance. I think this has become even stronger because of COVID and them not feeling like they have any boundaries in this world. Like that's something that they're really talking a lot about now. And we've seen it come up on panels with our onward career tours, like work-life balance keeps popping up as something that they really value. And I think that that's something that we can talk about later of a way that businesses can really help attract high quality employees by valuing this in the way that we allow people to schedule their time. And lastly, compensation, which I know is kind of a hot button around here in terms of making Eugene a little bit more accessible and attractive to young graduates. They want to be paid for their work at a rate that sometimes they have a rate in their head and Eugene can't always match it. And so I think it's important for us as business leaders to think about how can we help students understand the full package of what it means to live and work in Eugene. From the university's perspective, when we think about our graduates and what it means for them to be successful, ultimately, we want every graduate to have a job or some sort of satisfactory employment outcome upon graduation. So we track this. We survey all of our graduates and ask them where they end up. So we can track that the majority of our students are going to Portland, Seattle, LA, the Bay Area after graduation, some DCs here and there. But we can also track who's staying in Eugene, who's going to grad school, who's going on to do years of service. So we track all that at the university. And then we also want to know that every graduate has competencies that contribute to a lifetime of career success. So we want to make sure that they have those career readiness skills so that they can be able to be adaptable as industries change and as jobs change, that they have those base skills to be able to put themselves in positions to be leaders in whatever industry they decide to choose. So career ready is our buzzword over at the U of O, and it's something that is used across most four-year institutions and lots of two-year institutions as well. And these are the skill sets that we as universities are trying to help students develop through the classroom, through experiential learning, through part-time jobs and internships. But we, as kind of a body of universities and career centers across the United States, have talked with lots of employers. And these are the types of skill builders that we think students need coming out of a four-year institution to be successful in the workplace. And so we understand that four-year institutions aren't necessarily the best at building hard skills. We're not necessarily training grounds for some of those more technical job areas, but we do think that we can graduate students who have strong critical thinking skills, who are good working on teams, who understand technology, are focused on diversity, and have a lot of the leadership skills to help them to grow into future management positions. So as a part of their academic endeavors, we want them to be able to have a broad understanding, the ability to understand that your major does not make your career, that you can have a major and end up in something really unique. And so not to feel limited by what you're learning or by whatever degree plan you choose. But we also want them to have some disciplinary expertise, and that's why they do have a major. So we always encourage local businesses to think beyond the traditional majors that you think you want to recruit. There are lots of really great students who aren't studying marketing and traditional business right now who could make really great additions to your small businesses. And then lastly, this is just kind of an overview of the types of ways that the Career Center can help local businesses help their future workforce to become career ready. So the one thing that I think is most important is this idea of sharing about your career journey. A lot of our students want to hear stories about local business leaders, alumni, of just how in the world they got to their positions of leadership. And so if you have a story that you think you'd like to share, we have started a speakers bureau and are recruiting local business leaders to talk on panels, speak in classrooms, do networking events with our students. And so that can be a great way for you to get to know students and get to students to understand what your company is all about through your own expression of your own career story. One thing, and I think Seth kind of talked about this a second ago, but like for us, it's important that you know how to market your culture. And so a lot of our students are very web-based in the way that they try to discover future businesses they may want to work for. And so if you don't already have some sort of like a careers page or a mission and values page on your website, beef up your website to talk more about your culture and what you value, because students are going to read that and use that as an opportunity to get to know you better. And then we also, as we talk about Handshake, we can talk about how to create a great Handshake profile so that if students are using that service, they're able to understand what your values are through that platform as well. So the least amount of clicks, the better, tends to be how students react to the world. Another way that small businesses or businesses here in town can help our students and kind of start to build those relationships is through career skill building. And so we are always looking for business leaders to lead workshops, to host a jobs shadow opportunity or an intern. And then we also would love for you to meet with a new program we're starting called Career Clusters, where we're going to start collecting students around different industry interests and start introducing them more to leaders in those industries in our community so that they can figure out if that's where they want to be after graduation. Something that is really fun that you might want to do is what we call practice interviewing. We can set you up. We have students all the time who are really nervous about interviewing for their first job. And so we have a practice interview program, and small business leaders can volunteer to sit with a student and walk them through or practice interview and give them feedback afterwards. So that's another great way you can get to know students. Something that our students are really excited about and wanting to learn more about is this idea of informational interviews. And these a lot of times are where a student will find you on LinkedIn and see that you have a really cool job and want to learn more. And so just being open for students to reach out to you and maybe have 15 minutes of your time to just chat about what your industry does or what you as an individual does and how you got there. They just need examples of how to get to where they think they want to go. And then this idea of making connections. We do a lot of industry networking. It's an opportunity for you to share advice with students and also, of course, share job opportunities. And so that's another great way for you to get involved. Lastly, the best way to get to know students is by hiring them. And so we use a platform called Handshake. It's free to businesses. I'm one of the administrators of that site and I help with all the local businesses, but you can post your jobs there for free. And we are able to, we do curated lists at the university. And so we have like a hot jobs in Eugene list for part-time jobs and things like that, where students can find the best jobs in town a lot easier than having to search through all of Google or all Indeed to find jobs. And so I'm a person that's able to help you get set up in that. And so that's kind of what we have to offer. And I will be talking later about job descriptions because that's my jam, but I will hand it back over to Max.
Wonderful. Thank you, Holly. A great list of resources, and I know we'll make sure to probably connect more on that after the program too, and make sure we're getting you connected with folks. So the last panelist I want to introduce here is Maya, and Maya is a current student at UO, graduating soon, entering the workforce. And this is the first time we've ever done this, brought a current student in to give us, I think, a unique perspective and connect our business community directly to what those emerging graduates are experiencing. So Maya, if you want to introduce yourself and let the group know a little bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, no problem. So hi, like Max said, I'm Maya. I'm a senior at the U of O, 2 to 3 more weeks at in college. Study business with a focus in entrepreneurship. So everything's kind of wrapping up for me very, very, very quickly. And I'm gonna speak kind of fast because I do have class in like 20 minutes and I want to give time for some Q&A for people if they want to ask me questions or not. So I'm glad Holly went first because she kind of touched upon some stats that I was like, yeah, I'm in those statistics, students who probably aren't willing. I'm one of those students, I'm not willing to take a job that I don't feel like I can grow in just for the sake of getting a paycheck right after graduation. I think there's that kind of forced sense of security that maybe even you guys might have felt in your time in college, like, oh, we're supposed to, all these things right after college that I don't really think applies to everyone. And I think, I'm also in that other statistic of the 38% of trying to figure out a way to be in a position that'll help me with my skills in the future, because I know what I want to do may not be already set up for me yet. So I love that Holly went over that. And I think a lot of students are still feeling struggles with entering the job market with, applying to all these things and still not getting, the jobs that they want, or at least getting feedback. I think that's kind of hard, especially with a lot of students tend to, not focus on the small business as much in community and are instead kind of mass applying to, the big firms of Amazon, JP Morgan, the list goes on with all of them, Nike, Adidas, and like I've seen too many documentaries to kind of make me want to apply to certain companies at this point. So I'm kind of a little deterred from those ones. So I think I'm looking at more small business stuff for me, because I feel like that could be an interesting place to build community and really grow within my entrepreneurial mindset. And I think a lot of students are kind of facing the kind of thing that maybe Seth kind of touched a little bit upon, is like, how can I leverage myself to this job market that is still maybe a little better than it was a year ago, but still not like what it was before the pandemic hit, So I think that's at least what I'm facing. Like, how can I really make myself unique in these jobs that I'm applying for, even when there's all these other students that I know are vying for it. So I still think students are facing a lot of trouble, even as companies are kind of reopening. Are we really reopening at this point? I don't really know what the rules are. So I think there's just still a lot of uncertainty, especially when the job market's like, I'm on LinkedIn, they're like, oh, there's more jobs available. And you're like, are there really more jobs available? Because I'm applying to all these things and I don't really hear anything, and I'm not really getting the feedback that I want, and I'm not, feeling like I'm progressing in my postgraduate journey that I could be in an idealized situation. So I still think that students are unsure, if to just kind of summarize that, like, how can I really, do stuff after college with all the things that are going on. And I'm kind of in that boat too. So hopefully that can give a little bit of the students' experience, and we can kind of move on from that. I totally don't need to talk fast, but I want to give time for some questions and answers for people before I have to leave.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Maya, and for sharing that. And I know, we hear a lot about the national scale stories, and it's important to remember too that there are specific industries and specific locations and other places where some of what you're saying is definitely happening to folks where it's, maybe the industry you're interested in isn't hiring as much as some of the other positions that are open. And so the skills match is also something I know our chamber was working on, and with our employers too. Bonnie, I know we were going to touch on that, but I might save that till later just so we can make sure to get to some questions for Maya if there are any. So we'll keep that in our back pocket. And I think where I'd like to start, because Seth, Holly, Maya, all three of you really mentioned some of that local matching of talent, especially with local students. And Seth, folks who are maybe have been working in the industry here. I know before the meeting kicked off, we were talking a little bit about how some of what you were seeing with sort of more experienced restaurateurs coming into play in terms of new openings and different things. So I know locally, what we're looking at is wanting to keep and have that appropriately, skilled matched local talent for our business community. And I think part of that, Holly, you touched on it too, is making sure that this is an attractive place to keep those students, folks who move here, folks who might want to look to move here, make sure what we have for them here is what they want. So, and I don't know if one of you three wants to start first, but when you think about Springfield, Eugene, what does the business community specifically need to do to make sure it's an attractive place for that talent, and how can we make sure to keep that skilled workforce here or recruit that to our area?
Well, want me to go?
Sure, that's great.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not to be repetitive, and I'm curious to know, and I don't want to dive too much into my personal, job search, but I'm curious to see what attracted you, Maya, to actually applying for those jobs. Was their wording different? Did they talk about their culture? We talk a lot about recruiting in the hospitality industry. There's a lot of factors to that, including what we're asking as far as hard skill goes, right? So it just comes to a situation. It's like, maybe we develop a really good training program and we hire more on soft skills. Like we're going to open ourselves up to a lot more available people, because those soft skills are massively important for us as business owners and for new people coming into the workforce to develop. So I think really, again, it's, Holly had mentioned how people are looking for work. Are we thinking about video content and using social media as a way to attract, like, where are students, right? Maya, maybe you can attest to this, but where are students looking for work? Like, how are we communicating, again, what our values are? I mean, it's pretty simple. Like the numbers that Holly put up, those numbers have been around for a while. So like, this is not something new. And I still don't see it happening with a lot of businesses. So it's like, again, being honest with ourselves and saying, how are we communicating who we are? What are the words that we're using? What is important to these people that are coming into the workforce? What is the workforce looking for? And again, how do we align that without changing our standards? So again, talking about things that matter to them. I mean, number one on there, like compensation was third on that list. I've seen it as far down as 7 on the list as far as that, right? Autonomy, understand, like, is a big one. Being part of something is really important. So how do we describe, I feel like every job has that. So I think as far as recruiting goes, those are things that we really need to think about is, let's go after this workforce that, according to Maya's, like, clearly there's this disconnect happening, right? Like, we're like, we have jobs. And Maya's like, I can't find a job post-graduation, right? So where's this disconnect happening? And how do we fix it? And again, it just comes back, and I don't mean to be repetitive, but I will be. What questions are we asking? Right? We need to ask the right questions, and that's how we're going to get through this.
Yeah, and I can kind of touch on what Seth was saying from a student perspective. I just think overall, and I've had this conversation with Bonnie and Danny as well. Oh yeah, she's still in here. I think that the University of Oregon students have a really big disconnect to outside of campus. I think that we as students, I mean, I'm from Eugene, so I'm like, I get that there's like other places besides South Eugene and where the campus is, that there's kind of this bubble of what, the student experience is, and that's just on the university campus or down 13th, and it's just right there. That's all you need. The resources are here provided by X, Y, and Z. We have all this stuff provided for you, but then outside of that bubble, there are still a lot of opportunities. So I think that kind of starts there, the disconnect between the community or certain small businesses and kind of the university as a whole. So figuring out how to bridge that disconnect, I think, is probably the biggest challenge, and to tell all these students who, come from a lot of really big cities of like the Bay, of Seattle, of LA, like a lot of California students make that transition here of like, hey, there still are opportunities here for you to learn and grow. You just got to open your eyes to it. And then they'd be like, well, how do I open my eyes to that? So I think educating students to see, like, we have opportunities beyond South Eugene and all these other places here for you. And for me, as I'm applying to jobs, a big thing for me is kind of trying to think of like what I've applied to and what they've kind of put in their descriptions. I love, you know, when they talk about teamwork, kind of project-based situations, me looking at the entrepreneurship concentration, I love when they talk about ways that I could grow in that space as well. Like when they say, not necessarily like a fast-paced environment, but like an entrepreneurial set place where you can work with other people. That really speaks to me because I mean, I don't mind working by myself, but I feel like with entrepreneurship, you have to have that network and that, again, community of people for you to grow, not just by yourself, but with the company, the culture as well. So a lot of team player types of situation, a good highlight of what the culture is, entrepreneurial spirit. Also, I like the jobs that don't pigeonhole a lot. Like they say, I was looking at one and it was like, you could be from this major, but we're also looking at applicants. You don't have to be from this major as well. A lot of kind of open-ended situation. I think sometimes students get that fear of not applying to something because they're like, well, I'm not a product development student, but I'm really interested in what this job might have to offer. But they say they're only accepting this kind of applicant. So I like the job openings, I guess, that, you know, are willing to pivot and be more open-minded about what, you know, students can again leverage themselves to the job description.
So from my own experience as a millennial, I'm a little bit older than our Gen Z students, but I moved here from Texas a couple of years ago, and it was a really intentional search on part of my family to figure out where we wanted to kind of set up our future careers after 10 years of being in Texas, ready for something new. And on paper, Eugene and Springfield really stood out to us as we were looking at other communities. My husband wanted to go back to graduate school, so it felt like a pretty good opportunity. And like on paper, we're like, oh yeah, well, there's going to be so many ways to use our skill sets in this community, and we're very excited. And I applied for well over 30 jobs, mid-level management and nonprofit and the education sector. And I mean, I only was getting calls from the university, which is great. And I know that's really hard, but I've always worked in education and I wanted an opportunity to get out of it. And so it was hard for me to be able to kind of pivot my career. Career services is turning out to be a really good fit for me. So I'm glad it landed where I landed. But I think that's a thing that a lot of young professionals are realizing, like it's just really hard to find those kind of opportunities here in Eugene. They're not always posted in one place. It's still, there's still a really heavy networking to be able to get those job interviews. It's so much more than just applying for stuff on LinkedIn. Like you really do have to have those personal connections because it's a small town, and that's the way we function as a community. Is we really do kind of still use a lot of those networking things to try to get your foot in the door. So as an outsider, it was really hard to get my foot in the door here. But for our students, I think a lot of them coming from a college atmosphere, so just staying in South Eugene, they have community. And I think the thing that they don't necessarily always see is what exactly does the young professionals community look like in Eugene? And it's there and it really is thriving. And so I think that a way that businesses can support early talent is by paying for their early talent professionals to be involved in groups like the Eugene Young Professionals. And that's an opportunity for them to get to know other professionals in the area, to build up those networks so that when they start thinking about other career opportunities or growing their family here in Eugene, like they've got that support network like they used to have when they were in college. So I think because a lot of students are attracted to the bigger metro areas because they think there's going to be more opportunities for that kind of community, we have to make sure that we're exemplifying what it looks like to have community. And so that was something that was really important to me as a young professional who just moved here. The other things I think that businesses can do, they're really attractive to young professionals, is thinking about flexible schedules. We want to be able to take our kids to swim practice. We want to be able to go grab coffee in the middle of the day with a client across the town. Just being able to have a little bit more, like Seth said, have a little bit more autonomy in the way that we're able to do our work. That's something that we really value. And I think it's by having those types of things in our positions, it keeps us at those businesses a lot longer because we know that they value our time. And it helps us with that work-life balance that a lot of our students are talking about really desiring. And the other thing I think that businesses can really help advocate for at the city level is helping with that missing middle housing. A lot of us come to Eugene and we're college students, or we're young professionals without families, and it's totally cool to live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, we're totally okay with that. But like, when we start thinking about like, oh, I want to grow my family here in Eugene, like, it is hard. Like, there aren't houses, there aren't 3-bedroom apartments. Like, it's just really hard. And so I think some of us end up moving out just because we don't have anywhere to live. And so for business community to be able to advocate for missing middle housing, affordable housing, and things like that, I think it can help. If you're wanting to do a true pipeline of early talent, it can help keep us here in the community.
I'll hope to add one more thing too, Max, was one of the things you mentioned too, Holly, was work-life balance. We're in an awesome area, right? Like, you look at communities that are growing, even Portland, right? You look at Boise, you look at Bozeman, Montana, right? It's because they talk a lot about the cool things you get to do outside the city, right? They talk about that. You had a picture of a kayak, right? In that work-life balance. So I know, Eugene, Cascades Coast has some great resources. Maybe we can talk about teaming up with them and getting some, putting some cool pictures of the things that are happening around, right? Like some whitewater rafting or surfing or snowboarding, right? Like, Maya, am I right? That stuff is what people are looking for too, is that work-life balance outside of our work. Like, what does the community offer outside of it? And Eugene, Springfield is amazing for that. We're an hour to the coast, we're an hour to the mountains. We have beautiful parks inside here. So just some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, thanks to all three of you. And I know it looks like we have a couple questions or maybe just comments coming in. So Jane, I think you had your hand up first if you want to ask your question, and then we'll get to Malia and Sammy.
Thank you. Maya, I'm watching my clock because I know that you've got to go, but this question is for you. I thought I heard you say that there's something that you want to do, and it might be in the realm of it might not exist yet. Can you tell us what is it that where are you going? What is it that you want to do?
Yeah, that's the thing, because I was talking with another friend of mine like earlier, because she's kind of in the same situation as me. We really love kind of that entrepreneurial journey, and I'm kind of figuring out where my path is in that. Is it something, because I'm kind of working on this other project at the UVO, and it kind of has to deal with amplifying BIPOC student entrepreneurs and innovators. So it could be something entrepreneurial within, highlighting and exemplifying those kind of voices. It could be something where in the future I do my own accelerator program. Like, I don't know exactly where I'm fitting yet, Jane. Like, I don't know where I really want to go, but I do know that I'm trying to figure out some type of like business development kind of thing. I wish I could give you so much more of a concrete answer that could, really answer it, but I'm just figuring. I just don't really know yet.
I didn't expect a super concrete answer, but I was really interested in your dream. So thank you for sharing that. I think I get the gist of which direction you're going. And thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for the question, Jane. Malia, I saw you had a comment in the chat that I know sort of goes back to some of the conversation Maya and Seth were having sort of at the start of this year. I don't know if you wanted to share that or maybe follow up with the question.
Sure. Thank you, Max. Yeah, I just kind of made a comment over all what I was feeling, the impressions that I was getting from our speakers today. Just letting you know that there is sort of an inconsistency in the marketing when it comes towards jobs. I hear a lot of people and on social media platforms saying that there's no jobs, nobody's hiring. It's a very tense conversation. when I check in with my business communities, I hear people saying, we're desperately hiring, and, please recommend people for jobs. So I hope that that's encouraging to you, that when you really get out there and connect with people and you look at different resources, that there are some really great opportunities available. So I hope that that's encouraging for you as well. And then another thing, something that I really identified with you, Maya, was that your challenges that you face is in terms of housing and those types of infrastructure issues. I just want to let you know that that isn't strictly a graduate gripe. We as working professionals, we experience those same things. We have government issues and platforms that talk about housing, that talk about affordability. So it is an ongoing issue in both Eugene and Springfield, but I definitely felt like I wanted to be a bit encouraging for you today. So thank you so much for sharing a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Malia, and thanks for joining us, Maya. It looks like it's your time to head out. Thank you so much for
And I'm
joining us.
sorry, class is still going for me. Thank you so much for sharing, you guys.
Have a great afternoon. And Sammy, I saw, I don't know if you just wanted, while we're sort of on the topic there, to share about a couple programs you have.
Right, I really do appreciate this conversation. I find it a little interesting that I work for Head Start, so I work for a low-income population. But we're starting a new pilot project, and this topic of conversation matches so perfectly. So, I meant to be here. If you read the chat, you see that we have faced the same sort of challenges of trying to hire teachers for Head Start, and the education program as a whole is lacking with qualified teachers. So we are growing our own in-house using parents who are enrolled in our program and who have shown interest, and they have to go through a year-long program with us. And at the end, when they graduate, they can apply for a job that they qualify for. And we have hire like 75% of those graduates. And this is year 6 of this program. So it's been very beneficial. So these parents who were low income on services, benefits, food stamps, the gamut, are now making a good wage, have benefits, sick leave, vacation time, and a retirement account. So it has totally flipped their life around. But those are just those people who this is what they are interested in. And then we have a whole other group of parents that we are trying to help them and our community, as you were all saying, find their way. So one of the things that we are going to do is use an aptitude test to help fine tune what they would probably be best at and help change the language from a job to a career. And that sounds a little daunting, and that can sound a little scary. And those safety nets that our parents have go away. And housing is one of those. They could lose their housing, their food stamps drop off, they lose their medical. That's devastating and can be a hard jump to make. And so how do we bridge that? Can we bridge it through partnerships with businesses that are family friendly, that, as Seth has said, that matches our quality of life that we want, but also matches the business need? Is there an internship that can bridge that transition from receiving services to independence? So those are the types of things that we're looking at and trying to create in partnership with others. And I would love to have all of you come speak to us, because you bring a different view and a different vision that we need to hear. And you in turn, I'm sure, would love to hear from us. So thank you. This is very educational for me. And I'm sure that, as Seth has said, we are going to come up with great solutions.
Vonnie, and I know Paige is on here now too, so maybe Paige could jump in as well. But while we're talking about collaboration, what we're working on together, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the opportunities for folks maybe who don't know, and where our chamber focuses on addressing the skills gap, getting folks matched up to the right jobs and training.
Well, I'll be brief and just give Paige a heads up, because Paige is our Director of Talent Initiatives. So first of all, I want to swing back to Sammy. That sounds like a wonderful, successful, with some real results
Yes,
program that you're working on. If I understand right, you said it's focused on teachers right now, correct? Within,
correct.
but also looking for partners in the community to maybe connect some dots to other areas given the baseline aptitude tests.
Correct.
So what I'll say briefly is a couple of things. We have at this chamber for at least 4 years now identified and directed resources to talent and workforce development at a top tier level. So high priority, it's not going away, it's changing. It's even more critical today than it was when we started, and it was critical back then. So we've had to adapt over this last year some of our programming, but what I will say, and I'll tap Paige here, is that what you're looking for, and probably what a lot of folks on this webinar are looking for, is how do we connect, our traditional, say, K-12 education partners, our community colleges, our University of Oregon partners, all of our partners in education, and our business community directly. How do we close that sort of silo, or break down the silos and directly connect everyone in real conversations? And as Seth says, the problem solving that like innovators can do. And there are a lot of innovators in the nonprofit, in the for-profit, and in the education community. We just got to bring those people to the table to solve problems. And we're doing that right now and have been in different ways. So I wanted to, first of all, just call out and say kudos to you. I noodling on it, I'm sure Paige is too, as we're speaking, how we can connect, perhaps after the meeting, on this program that you're working on and partner. But Paige, perhaps you can give some what you're hearing, I think, in our education, and we call it a work ready initiative. I like career ready because we're really looking at sort of multiple avenues of careers, but we had kind of launched that with sort of around the career and technical education, those real skills-based needs that our employers were, hoping to gain from the Work Ready initiative. But it's ever evolving and it's fluid, and we're doing some pretty cool problem solving. And Paige, maybe you want to plug them into a couple resources that we have, but also some solutions that we're working on.
Yeah, and I want to apologize that I came in half an hour late to this discussion, but it overlapped with some work that we're doing with the National Skills Coalition and our federal delegations around some movement at the federal level for resources for businesses and for students applying for financial aid, and for community colleges who need funding for their CTE programs. So there's a lot of movement going on at a local level, state level, federal level. And as Bonnie said, because this is such a priority for the business community, it's a really big priority for the chamber. So we try and stay as plugged in as possible to what's going on. And I'll share a couple of things that we have and some projects that we're working on, but I'm happy to answer questions if you guys have them. To the topic of collaboration that Max mentioned, none of this work would get done if we didn't have all the partners at the table. There are a lot of opportunities out there for students, for workforce development, for training programs. And there are also a lot of issues and challenges that we have, things that are, holdover maybe from years and years ago when we put mandates in place or laws in place, and when we spelled this all out 50 years ago, going into things like apprenticeship. So there's a lot of things that we, as we work towards developing a better pipeline for workforce development, there's a lot of places where we just sort of need to get out of our own way in Oregon here. And so working through some of those challenges, having partners on board like Lane Community College, like Lane Workforce Partnership, like the Education Service District, it's really important that we're all on the same page. and that we can kind of combine forces and provide opportunities for individuals in our community for training programs. We have one resource that you can feel free to plug into is our education committee, which kind of helps drives that work ready program that Bonnie mentioned. You know, we in a normal year have programs for K-12 students with a real focus on 8th through 12th grade with the Springfield School District to introduce them to career opportunities with a really strong focus on career and technical education, because that is where we see the business community really being able to plug in, support the actual skills training that students are getting, and introduce them to actual businesses in Lane County that exist that would love to hire them once they have those skills down. And in fact, sometimes those students graduating from high school have enough skills and training that they get like their CNA certification and they go right into a job after high school. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for kids. And the education committee kind of helps drive some of those programs. We also stay sort of just up to date on what's going on in the area so that we do feel plugged in. Couple of months ago, we had a presentation from Lane Community College, and it really spurred kind of an exciting program that we're working on, again, with Lane Workforce Partnership and the Lane Community College to launch. And that's kind of a cohort program for trainees in manufacturing, welding, and construction. So this is just sort of an example of how you know, a conversation at a committee meeting can really lead to some great opportunities, not just for the business community, but for those trainees who are going to end up getting hired in jobs that pay them like $18 an hour to start with. So we have a couple of sister manufacturing companies in the area with close to 200 job openings just amongst themselves. So we're looking at forming a cohort model training program at Lane Community College. And again, this is a conversation that really just kicked off at the end of March. And we already have Lane Community College committed to providing the trade skills fundamental courses, welding courses, and manufacturing courses over the summer for the first time ever. And that's going to be really critical to getting students in that training pipeline and then having them graduate with a job. So they've got somewhere to land once they finish that training program. And we're looking at kicking that off this summer. So we're really excited that those all just got approved, and we'll work on kind of next steps are what that recruitment piece looks like, and then the funding piece for those students to help get them through. And again, there's a lot of options for funding out there. So there's a lot of tools like the on-the-job training dollars that businesses can have access to, and Lane Workforce Partnership has more information about that, but I can connect you with those resources too if you've got questions. There's step funding for students who qualify for, if they qualify for food stamps, they automatically qualify for the step funding, and that helps pay for some of those wraparound services too. I think it's a really great tool that the community college can offer a student to help pay for things like books. Or if a car breaks down and that's something that's necessary for them to get to classes, that it can help fund that too. So it's some really flexible funding that we have available from the federal government that we need to be taking advantage of, I think, as employers in this area, and encouraging our future workforce to be able to access these tools. So we've got an online career exploration that we launched, the education committee launched recently. And if you guys want, oh, thanks, Max. If you guys want to fill that out, it's just kind of a really cool tool for students to be able to go in, and we can't get together in an in-person career fair, but I think that this actually gives it a little bit more sustainability and longevity to have this online tool for students to go browse through jobs. My favorite part of it is actually the piece where you can provide some just feedback to students, suggestions and tips and tricks for looking for jobs in that industry. It's kind of fun if you want to go through and read through whatever other employers have mentioned. And then we have an actual job board that we did launch last year as well. And so that's managed by a professional HR company in this area who actually presented at our last week's boot camp session, Performance Resources. So they've been pretty incredible. They actually manage that job board entirely for us. It's exclusive to chamber members. You can post single jobs or you can work with them on kind of an annual model to post jobs if you've got a lot. I see Deanna on the call. Wildish probably hires quite a few people and posts a lot of jobs a year. So there's options for either, and that gets pushed out, not just to our job board, which again is exclusive to chamber members, but it gets pushed out to, I think, like 12 other job boards. There are available things like, LinkedIn and Indeed and all those big ones too. So really helps kind of get the word out about career opportunities available in our area. And then we do our best to share those resources again with all of our workforce partners in the community. And that was probably a ton of information. So if you guys have questions about that, or you want to follow up with me afterwards, I'll pop my email in the chat too.
Thanks, Paige. And I do want to make sure we leverage Seth and Holly's expertise while we have them on the call here. So we'll maybe come back if folks have questions there, but I did want to direct this is from our staff, Seth and Holly. And Holly, maybe we'll start with you, and Seth, I'm sure you have lots of ideas here too. But something, both of you brought up was making job postings more enticing for either younger folks or just attracting folks to our area. Seth, I know you mentioned leveraging some of the, great features of our community that we can use in job postings. But so when you're thinking about putting a job posting together, about highlighting culture, about making sure it's sending the right message, what would maybe your top couple tips be, or how would you frame up going about that?
Yeah, so I look at job descriptions all day long, approving them in Handshake. So I've seen the best and the worst of our community when it comes to how to write these things. But I totally agree with Seth. Like the best ones that we see, they're essentially marketing to our students to help them understand why is there a place for you at our company? This is what it's going to feel like to work there. These are the types of skills that you're going to learn or that you're going to be able to contribute as a part of this team. Those are things that students really gravitate towards, where it feels like you're talking to them. I know a lot of times when we are formulating job descriptions, it kind of feels like this wish list. We're like, oh, this would be the perfect person if we could get all these different skills and all of this experience in one place. And when you put that out on the internet, it can be really intimidating, especially to college students who have no quote unquote like experience to them. And so I think a lot of my students, when I talk to them, like they'll fit a lot of the job description, but then it'll say 1 to 3 years experience or something like that. And they're like, well, Holly, I don't have any experience. And so for them, they can see themselves in the skill sets, but they feel like that's not, because of that little sentence about experience, they're like, well, I'm not qualified. And we know that they probably still get an interview without that. But sometimes it's just a barrier, especially to our students from diverse backgrounds. It gives them a sense of imposter syndrome, and it kind of undoes a lot of the stuff that they know that they have the skills to be able to be successful. And so anytime you can kind of veer away from like traditional like experience language and talk more about these are the skill sets that are needed to be successful. These are things that you're going to learn on the job. That can also be something really attractive to students, because for a lot of these part-time and first job out of college, our students are thinking about the types of skill sets they want to be building for their future careers. And so if you can show them how this job is a skill builder for them, and that they're going to walk away after working for you a couple of years with all these skills, hard skills that they really desire, like that's how you're going to get them to stay with you too. And so I think it's just really important to kind of think about how are people reading the job description. I've seen a couple creative job titles lately. I saw one the other day, was like a marketing ninja. And I was like, I can't tell you any of my students who are searching in Handshake for marketing ninja. Like, that's just not how they're searching. And so the employer was like, why are no students applying for this? I'm like, because you use the word ninja. Like, it's not popping up in their search features. And so try to think like an entry-level employee. What are the types of words, the keywords, buzzwords that they're going to be looking for in the types of jobs that they want to be able to do? The other thing I would say is, especially with part-time jobs and things like that, is this an opportunity where a student could learn things on the job? If so, make it a list of, like, instead of saying requirements, kind of say like, these are the skills that we will help you develop. The other thing is, if you only have one part-time position, what would be the difference between having a part-time employee and maybe a paid intern? I think a lot of my students, especially when thinking about their experiences here in Eugene, are looking specifically for internship experiences. And so I think that if you're able to take the funding that you had set aside for a part-time employee and maybe rethink what that could look like as an internship that could have a student being mentored by some of your staff, an opportunity to work on project-based learning, get to know your company as a whole. I think that that's a great way to create that talent pipeline for when you do have entry-level opportunities or you want to be able to keep students here in the area. I think a lot of our students, especially during the summer, are looking for internships. And so it's a great way, if you've got the funding set aside for a part-time employee, to think about what it could look like as an internship. And in the link that I will leave with you guys, I've got an internship guide I've been working on. And so it's got a lot of great tips for how to set up a program. And I love having conversations with our local business community about how to create those programs and how to get students into those roles.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really disagree with anything Holly said. She's pretty much nailed it. I think that's really key. I think there's something in there though too, is again, if we think about kind of traditional marketing, we're trying to kind of convey an experience, right? So whether that's a customer or consumer, you know, you think about you're advertising a hotel, right? Oh, it's near all these great restaurants and there's live music and you're kind of describing the feel and atmosphere of the experience of being there. I think that's kind of key for a job as well, right? Like let's use the words that show the experience that you're going to have here. Kind of just piggyback on what everything Holly was saying was dead on, right? It's just, you know, again, asking the question of what is the workforce looking for again, and how do we match it up in our description? But then don't, you know, I heard the word imposter in there, but on the reverse side, we don't want to be imposters as owners, right? So that's great if we can get a bunch of people to come apply. But I can tell you, turnover and training is really high cost. So if we don't live up to what we're saying in the ads, it's not going to work out very well for us. I hope I'm not jumping too much into retention here. Retention is a big one for me, right? Because once we get them in the door, how do we retain them? Like, I don't care what business you're in. Turnover training is going to be a massive cost. So retention is so important. So let's not be like things got to match up. So we can't have this awesome job description, right? And the student's so excited, and then they get there in their first week, they're like, I am out of here. Like, this is nothing what they described. There's nothing worse than being told it's going to be like this, and it's a totally different experience dealing with it, right? So let's back up what we're saying. I think is so crucial, and I can definitely talk more about retention if you want to get to that later, Max. But that's just a thought I was having as I was listening to Holly describe, you know, and give some of that advice. Is like, we got to back it up too, you know?
Absolutely, Seth. Yeah, and I didn't see you know, any hands get raised or anything there. So I think if you want to hop right over to retention and maybe some of the trends you're seeing in hospitality, how that could cross over for other folks, and give us some insight there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, 3 words: culture, culture, culture for retention. I mean, that is key. So I think it was 2012. I know it was a while ago, but it was a really comprehensive case study done by University of Oregon and Northwestern University combined to do a case study on company culture. And it was, and very rare, I think it was updated again in 2015 to show the same results. But I mean, it was plainly obvious that companies that displayed what was considered a good work culture were more profitable and had higher retention than their competitors that did not. I mean, again, you know, in the hospitality world and in the business world, to me, it's really a numbers game, right? So it's all about numbers for me. And so when I see stats like that are just like, hands down, no doubt, this is something that we have to have. So your culture is vitally important in retention. And again, living up to what we're saying, right? So one of the things I always did when I was running restaurants was when an employee would start, how they started in the orientation was so important, right? I would, hey, let's sit down and have lunch together. I want to get to know you, right? Like, let's do orientation over lunch. What can I get you? And I would really take my time to get to know them. I had these personnel sheets where I would list out what was important to them in life. Why are you here? You know, where are you going in your life, right? What are your goals? Because I would utilize that as motivation to help them, right? And you know, just throwing an example. Oh, hey, I want to be a I had somebody tell me I want to open an animal sanctuary and have my own farm. That's great, right? That's awesome. Let's figure out how we can gain those skills here in this job. How can I coach you on a consistent basis with that in mind? Like, hey, Brendan, when you open your farm, you're going to want to, like put them where their future is and then use those skills. So like culture is so important, right? Constant coaching leads to less corrective action, like really having a positive work culture. We talk about the work-life balance. We look at things, like I said, again, going back to what all this information is online. Holly is a great resource for you guys as far as what is the workforce looking for. So just making sure that we align with that, right? But then keeping our standards in there as well. But again, culture is the most important thing for retention. And then I would say is growth. I don't care what size business you have. Talk about growth within your company and promote growth within your company, right? I think that's so important that we need to look at, a lot of times in the restaurant industry, there's different levels, right? You can start in the dish pit and you can work your way up to manager or, accounting, whatever you want to do. But why not promote from within, right? And why not use that as coaching opportunities? So I always posted jobs for at least 2 weeks in-house first before I posted them outside. I wanted to see who was coming to me. I wanted to see who was looking and interested in changing the position, finding out why. And it was a great coaching opportunity for me too, right? I can be like, hey, listen, you're right on track in these areas for this position, but here's 3 or 4 areas that you're right, giving them an autonomy, giving them that control where I have these 3 areas to really focus on and get better at so I can be in that position. And checking back in with them, just don't have a one-time conversation. It's like constant coaching leads to less corrective action and leads to a lot less retention as well. So that's my thoughts. I mean, like I said, we could probably talk about this for a while, but those are just some highlights for me as far as retention goes, is say what you mean and mean what you say as far as your culture goes, back it up, really figure out what the workforce is looking for, and then promote growth within your company.
Excellent. Thank you, Seth. And Holly, I saw Malia had a sort of a great thought in the chat, and I don't know, maybe if you would have some insight on how, just with your experience matching students up with the right opportunities. Malia gave an example of some high turnover at a colleague's workplace, and sort of was wondering, what leads to that, if there's a disconnect in job description or a culture mismatch. When you're working with students, how do you sort of make sure that alignment is there?
Yeah, I think Seth made some great references to it as well. Like, I think that this idea of individualization, like our students almost kind of expect that. And so as a business leader, especially if you have a small staff, like what are the extra steps that you can take to make sure that people feel wanted, feel needed, especially in those beginning days of building your culture and building your relationship with them. Like, if they don't think anybody's going to care that they don't show up on day 3, they're not going to show up. And so I was talking to a student the other day, and she was talking about a recruiter who had been interacting with her. And she's like, yeah, the recruiter texted me the day before and just said how excited she was to get to interview me. And so like, I prepared extra hard because like it felt mutual. And so, I mean, all it took for that recruiter was probably like 3 seconds to like jot out a little text message to the student just to encourage her. And so as small business leaders, like we can definitely scale that. And I think for a lot of these new positions and things like that, like especially with college students, like we have to understand like this might be the first job that they've ever had. Their understanding of like professionalism and things like that are things that they're growing in, and they may not think twice about the fact that like maybe like you should tell somebody if you're not going to show up on day 3. Like I hear all the time about students ghosting interviews and things like that, and so like there's definitely this learning curve for our students to understand like what does it look like to be professional in that interview and training process. But I think if you're able, like Seth had talked about, this kind of 2-way street of like, I'm investing in you, you can invest back in me. And I think about the first job I had after graduation, my my supervisor told me, she's like, I'm training you for your next job, whatever that is. Like, I want to make sure that whenever you leave me, that like you are a great representation of yourself and the skills that you've learned while working for us. Like you're our billboard. And I worked for her for 10 years. So like, like I didn't want to leave it all. Like she was just such a great boss. But I just remember that was the way she was approaching her interaction with me, that it was about my professional growth, about my ability to build skills and that she saw leadership potential in me. And so I think when we're able to do that within, especially small businesses or smaller teams, I think students just feel that they're more valued. And so we just got to make sure that they don't feel like a number. So when we hire 60 people all at once, which I know is pretty common in bank culture, to have a pretty big cohort to start, figuring out if maybe in addition to the HR representatives, if there's people within other departments that can kind of serve as mentors and liaisons during that process, to just make sure that people aren't falling through the cracks. Thanks for that question, Malia.
Yeah, I also just want to mention too, people calculate culture and as a soft cost to your business. It's a hard cost. I think that's really important to understand. A lot of business owners make that mistake. So they may think, oh, you just mentioned hiring 60 employees. Well, what if we dedicated 60 additional hours to our individual time to each one of those? What does that investment look like to the turnover rate that I could face if I don't do that? Right. So it is a hard cost. It is a numbers game that we, it's one of those things in business where sometimes it's like, hey, this is just the right moral thing to do, so I need to do it because it's business ethics, right? And then there's decisions that we make that are like, hey, this is a really wise return on investment decision I'm making, right? But when those two things line up, that's awesome. That's like a no-brainer decision to make, right? Like when the right thing to do, which is to help develop and be part of the community and make your workplace an awesome place to work, and it's also a good investment for you, that's just a decision that, again, to me is a no-brainer decision that needs to be made. But yeah, it is absolutely a hard cost. Again, I'm coming into it from a business perspective, but that's my point. We have to view it that way and think about it, because it will cost us a lot of money if we don't. And it will also cost us the ability to grow. It will force a recession in our business on its own with a lack of workforce.
Jane, it looks like you, I am unmuted. Okay, Jane, it looks like you have a question, and then Kristen, we've got you in the queue as well too.
I can listen to Seth and Holly talk all day long. You guys are fabulous. I am learning so much. It's great. So I feel like I'm kind of taking away some of this momentum that we've had here. But I saw a statistic that said that women tend to not apply for jobs if they don't meet 100% of the requirements, whereas men tend to apply for jobs if they meet only 70. So my question is, do you think it would make sense on job postings to say, if you meet most of these, we'd love to talk to you, to kind of take some of the pressure off? I just want to get what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think one of the other notes I had written down was just this use of inclusive language in our job descriptions and trying to help anybody who's reading it see themselves in that role. But you're totally right. Like a lot of women, like we will self-select out of things that we could probably be really awesome at. And so that is something I encourage businesses to do, even if it feels like it's kind of silly. You're like, well, of course people know that you don't have to meet it 100%. Sometimes just seeing that on there of just saying like, or instead of using words like required, like just say that like these are things that like a wish list, or like there are more professional ways to say that, of course, but this is the idea of like these are the types of qualities we're looking for, and make it a lot less about like minimum requirements and things like that might be self-limiting. And so I think a little statement like that for women, veterans, all different kinds of BIPOC communities, LGBTQ people, like any type of identifier groups that might feel limited, having some sort of statement is something they read into as well. Like if you're taking the time to write that little statement, it helps them know that they're being thought of in the process.
Thank you.
Kristen, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Sure. It's actually less of a question and more of a comment. I really appreciate everything that's been said around, especially recently, Seth, about culture, and listening to Maya talk about being a student in the business entrepreneurship program and what she's looking for, because everything I've heard today is a very similar path that I took. And I've now been in my role for, 15 years in this community, but knowing it's a little bit sad to me to hear that, wow, the students are still having the same issues of connecting with businesses, doing informational interviews, which is something that I did and was able to find. So I'm like, yeah, check that box off. We need to get plugged into informational interviews. When I look at my list of what was important to me looking for jobs, culture was number one. And I also owned a small business when I was going through college and did a startup at 18, 19 years old. And so worked myself through that. And so for me as a business owner going through the business school, culture was number one. And even though it was just a very small business, my employees knew that that was the most important thing for me. And you may not get the best pay, but I'm going to do everything to make this a fun environment and make it flexible so you can go to school too, because that's what I'm doing as a business owner. So, and again, I appreciate everything everybody said and comments, and it's just been, sorry, I've been eating, so I have my camera off, but it's been a really fun conversation. I wish there were more people here to join in and listen, and hopefully take some of this to interest. And Holly and Seth especially, thank you for everything that you've shared.
Thanks for sharing that, Kristen. We have a few minutes left. I want to be respectful to everyone's time and hit our 1 p.m. cutoff. We have time for one, maybe two more questions if someone from the group has anything in mind for Seth or Holly or both. Not seeing any hands. So what I'll do is take a minute to provide a few reminders here before we wrap up. One would be we will have a recording of this. It will be sent out to you. If you need to reference anything, it will be there for you. Holly was excellent in providing her slides and a link and other information. I'll also include that in an email out to the group so folks have that available. We'll have a survey. We'd love to get your feedback on this program. Our business members are who drives us to the programs that we provide. This topic came up because it was important to our members. We're looking for new ideas. We also want feedback on what we put together for you. The last thing, and Jane, I'm putting you a little bit on the spot here. Jane is our featured speaker for our third and final session. It's going to be excellent. Jane, I know, like I said, I'm putting you on the spot. Do you want to share maybe 1 or 2 minutes on what we'll be talking about?
Yes, I am preparing for a talk on having difficult conversations in the workplace. And the best part of preparing, not only being a little nervous and making sure you want to deliver something really quality, is the conversations and the research I've been having. So just this morning, I was talking to a dear friend in Spain and talking about how have you had difficult conversations with your staff? This is a gentleman who's in his 70s who was an administrator in schools for many years. And it was so interesting to hear the Spanish way of doing things. And I learned something that's very different than what we do. So that's my little teaser. I'll be glad to share that. But I'm really excited about it. We'll just buckle our seatbelts and hang on, and it will be a fun time. We should enjoy it. So that's what I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. So a reminder for everyone, that's next week, Wednesday, same start time, 11:30 on the 26th. I'll put a sign up link for that in the email to the group as well. We'll look forward to having you there. Like this and our other sessions, we want to make it interactive and sort of feel like a workshop for everyone. So make sure to put that on your calendar for next week if you can join us. With that, I'll thank our sponsor, Northwest Natural, one last time. They're excellent in allowing us to be able to put these types of programs together. And of course, a thank you to Seth, Holly, and Maya. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing with the group, and for everyone else for joining us in the great questions, input, and conversation today. So with that, we are done a few minutes early, and everyone have a great afternoon.
Like I say, finding $1 in your pocket. It's like finding $1 in your pocket.
Exactly.
Minutes extra. Thank you, Seth and Holly. Thank you, everyone. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
A lot from you.
Thank you.